Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to Make80s Entertainment. I'm your host as always, Adam McGahee. Well, I know this one seemingly took forever, but I'm finally back at you guys with another Marvel Zombies video. Hot off the tails of the Marvel Zombie series on Disney+, Marvel has actually dropped a brand new Marvel Zombies comic, which is called Marvel Zombies Red Band. Now, unlike every other version of Marvel Zombies so far, this is the only series to only get a physical release. Yeah, you heard that right. There are no digital copies anywhere. Soon as this bad boy came out, I looked everywhere. From the shadiest of the shady comic sites to the absolute bowels of Reddit. Seemingly, no one had a digital version of this comic. There was literally everything else you could find online except this comic. Now, I did hear this was due to the graphic content within the comic itself. Marvel gets really weird with their red bands, as they're essentially like their rated R comics, and they don't want them digitally available so kids don't get a hold of them. That's honestly really weird to say though, as the original Marvel Zombies is definitely just as violent, if not more so than this new series, and those things are, like, everywhere. Nothing like a little bloody zombie Spider-Man to turn a boy into a man. However, despite the roadblocks, the show must go on. I went and ordered the physical comic from eBay itself and took pictures of every single page with my phone so I could get this video out for you guys. So if you're wondering why the video quality looks like some guy took pictures of a random comic book with my phone, well, that is exactly because this guy did take pictures of a random comic with my phone. That's how much I love you. Before we hop into that, I wanted to update you guys of a brand new song drop from my boys and friend of the show, the Country Hicks. If you're a fan of rap, country music, or even both, these guys are the absolute goats of the industry. They just dropped a new song called Where I Need to Be, which is available right here on YouTube. Their music definitely has the aesthetics of something you'd hear in a Punisher or Ghost Rider series, so I would definitely check them out. As always, our free 2-week superhero training plan is also available. If you're looking to get in superhero shape, follow us on Instagram at Make80s Fitness. I have the link to the free training in my bio. It will give you access to my app, but if you're interested in more long-term paid one-on-one training, shoot me a message with code SUPER. With that out of the way, let's get on with what you came here for, and that is Marvel Zombies Red Band, issue number 1. The tale begins on an alternate version of the 1960s Marvel Universe. We see a young Peter Parker greeting his Aunt May. He's rather excited to watch a program on the television, telling the woman that this broadcast is important. This would be the live televised return of the Richards family, coming back home from their fantastic voyage into the reaches of space, idols that the aspiring young scientist Peter looked up to. In steps Uncle Ben, who is still alive on this earth. He tells the young man to sit up straight, for leaning is bad for his posture. Before the broadcast would commence, it cut to its sponsor, which was a preview of the next episode of The Ed Sullivan Show. This episode would feature a first-time interview with the sensational Spider-Man. This was the point in time where Peter was trying to use his powers to become a rich celebrity. He quickly tried to change the subject and distract his aunt and uncle while the commercial was on. Pete, there's no shame in getting that bag, bro. Man, it would have been so much easier for him if TikTok were around back then. Things would then cut back to the broadcast, as the nation awaited the return of their celebrity scientists. It is here that we find out a bit more about this mission. On this Earth, this launch was unauthorized. The Four had actually stolen this rocket. Mission Control was initially capable of communicating with the ship, but lost control earlier that morning when a sudden wave of energy blasted it, frying their telecom equipment. As we see the rocket re-entering the atmosphere, it wasn't just the nation who waited with bated breath for the scientists to return. We'd also see the US military was also waiting to arrest the crew as, yeah, they kinda stole a rocket. The craft would safely arrive, as would the soldiers, ready to apprehend these heroes for their crimes. As the doors would open, we'd see a pitch blackness. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, a familiar stretchy-looking hand would emerge and grab one of the troopers, where it would drag him into the darkness as his comrades would hear him scream in terror. The Fantastic Four had arrived. However, they weren't quite themselves. While still blessed with the usual abilities of their Earth 616 counterparts, they also had been transformed into hellish zombified beasts with an unending appetite for human flesh. To celebrate their arrival, Reed decided to crack a cold one open by immediately biting the head off the soldier, spraying crimson mist all over the ground. The remaining troopers would open fire, but they were no match for the superpowered undead, who soon tore them and even the news crews to shreds, all while the country watched on live TV. Such carnage shook the Parker family to their very core, where poor Aunt May's heart couldn't take it, where she soon collapsed. Wasting no time, Ben scooped her up and pleaded with Peter that they needed to get the woman to a doctor ASAP. On the New York grounds, we'd be taken to one of the bloodiest panels from the comic as we witnessed the Fantastic Four having an early Thanksgiving as they viciously slaughtered and fed upon the horrified citizens. The Thing even muttered a twisted version of his catchphrase saying, "It's goblin time." That's honestly how I pictured Joey Chestnut hyping himself up each time before the yearly hot dog eating contest. Meanwhile, we'd be taken halfway across the country, where we'd see a group of heroic youths called the Teen Brigade. They'd received the radio signal of what was going on in New York City. Despite not having powers themselves, they had the strength of their intelligent minds, where they then used their radio equipment to tap into a special frequency that only one of the most powerful heroes on Earth could hear: the Incredible Hulk. While Bro may have been taking a nap, all he needed to hear was that there were monsters that needed smashing, and he immediately woke up and sprang into action. This signal was also intercepted by this world's Iron Man, who immediately rocketed in the same direction. Meanwhile, at a New York hospital, we see Aunt May, who is recovering from her panic attack from earlier. The physician tending to her was a Dr. Donald Blake, who in older comics we know as the human identity for the mighty Thor. As Peter was in the waiting room sketching designs for his new web shooters, he was immediately alerted to the sound of the hospital doors flying open. In rushed countless paramedics, all wheeling in people who had been severely injured in the Fantastic Four's assault. The puzzled Dr. Blake would go to tend to the wounded, where suddenly they would spring to life as the people would turn into monstrous zombies. Reborn with a ravenous taste for flesh, these undead would brutally assault the hospital staff, eating anyone in their way. Blake would fight back against the creatures and vowed this bloodshed would not go unavenged. He would then transform into Thor, where he'd battle the beast, easily turning them into a bloody meaty paste with his mighty Mjolnir. Seemingly having a sense of self-preservation, the remaining zombies saw they had no chance of fighting back against the Thunder God, where they fled the scene as a very confused Odinson asked where they were going. Things would then cut to Peter, who was seemingly frozen in fear and shock of just what was going on. In a horrifying next set of panels, we'd see a young nurse attempt to run from the hordes, where she'd soon collapse to the floor and plead for help. There'd be no time to act, as in the very next second she was pulled away, where all the young Parker could do was listen to her screams of agony as she was consumed. Making his way into the room, Thor would summon his lightning to fry the monsters, demanding an end to this senseless violence. The panic-stricken Peter would then equip his web shooters and swing through the halls in a desperate attempt to reach Aunt May's hospital room, praying that she was safe. He'd be attacked by a group of zombies where he'd scream at them to get off of him, even having to resort to killing as he cracked one's neck. Finally making his way to May's room, Peter would see that his prayers had fallen on deaf ears, as he found the room completely trashed and screamed to the heavens, where he located the eviscerated and bloodied corpse of the woman who raised him. A few moments later, we'd see Matt Murdock and his friend Foggy Nelson taking a nightly stroll through the city streets. As they discussed the usual complexities of Matt trying to maintain his relationship with Karen with his outings as Daredevil, Matt would soon sense that something was terribly wrong. His superhuman hearing would alert him of the growing hordes nearby, where he'd pull a Batman and vanish by Foggy's side, leaving the man wondering just where he went. As the zombie horde's numbers would grow, we'd see this was all going according to Zombie Reed's plan. He'd call out to his undead brethren. One thing he couldn't stand was random chaos. They were going to have to be smart about this, organized. He knew they were all starving, but soon every belly would be fed. Their conquest was just beginning. Suddenly, like lightning from heaven itself, the Avengers would arrive. The Holy Trinity of Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor were finally here to put an end to this madness. Tony would attempt to call out to the humanity within Reed. Richards was once a smart man, a good man, but the real question was, would he do the right thing and turn himself in, or would they have to do this the hard way? Suddenly, Daredevil would arrive to the scene. He knew Tony's intention was noble, but he had good ears. The hearts of these monsters no longer had a beat. There was literally no heart to appeal to. But their stomachs would never stop growling. The heroes would then go to war with each other, where Daredevil and the rest would tear the zombie legions apart. Thor would whip his hammer at Sue Storm, where we'd see the woman's power on full display, as she'd easily catch the weapon in one of her force fields. Separated from Mjolnir, the mighty Thor would then find himself depowered, where he'd resort back to his human host Donald Blake. This revelation would shock the zombie Sue. This god was just a man after all, and she killed many men on this day. She would then use her power to crush Donald within the field until his insides literally burst open, turning the once all-powerful god into a bloodied bubble of brains. With this fresh batch of Asgardian kombucha freshly brewed, Sue would then dump Thor's remains onto their zombie army to feed upon. Hey, I mean, at least these zombies do share. It's kinda wholesome in a very disturbing zombie way. As the battle would continue, Hulk soon found himself ensnared by Zombie Reed, who planned to infect him as they needed powerful warriors on their side. However, this Hulk didn't swing that way and tore through the man, vowing to rip the stretchy man to shreds, and would then tear the shreds to shreds. The badly wounded Reed and the rest would look on in horror at the Hulk. They underestimated this Avenger's strength and needed to retreat now. The super zombies would then make their getaway, swearing revenge. This was not over. Not even close. The rest of the undead army too would flee, much to Hulk's dismay, as he still had plenty of smash left in him. He, Iron Man, and Daredevil would then make their way to higher ground to try and formulate a plan. Daredevil was way out of his depth here, and Tony had never seen anything quite like this in his life. However, one thing he knew was certain. They were able to put up a fight no one else could, and were able to harm these monsters. Together, they may stand a chance at protecting this place. This world needs defenders. Later that night, we'd see Spider-Man slowly fade into the darkness, with a trail of gore behind him. Blaming himself for Aunt May's death, this young man came to a bleak realization of his iconic catchphrase: "With great power comes great responsibility." At the Baxter Building, we'd see the Zombie 4 recover from their previous battle. The Thing would admit that whatever humanity he had died when they went to space. He did not fully understand this thing he had become, or what it wanted. Despite this great change, Sue told the man that they were all still a family, and nothing could change that. All in all, their mission remained the same. Reed would agree with that sentiment. The whole point of their cosmic mission was to share their findings with the world, with the brightest minds Earth had to offer. Johnny, still being his energetic, youthful self, said that while this was true, they could do that tomorrow. They were finally home, and it was the time to celebrate. He would then dub the group the title of the Frightful Four, a name that Reed did not mind at all. In the vast reaches of space, we then see the Silver Surfer flying through the cosmos. Despite seeing countless oddities in his servanthood to Galactus, what he saw next caused the man to stop dead in his tracks. While normally warmed by the light of the galaxy's stars, the Surfer was surrounded by nothing but pure blackness. The stars had all mysteriously vanished without a trace.